Members of Parliament elected to the House of Commons in the United Kingdom hold that privileged position of being elected to represent the needs of their constituents. Normally they come from one of the major political parties and are expected to uphold the values and standards of the office and the people that they represent. Unfortunately, not all of them do. In this video, I'm going to go through 5 members of Parliament who have committed a criminal offence and then served time in prison. Welcome to my channel, Andy on Crime, where I talk about high-profile criminal cases and other aspects of criminal law in England and Wales. If you do have any comments on this video, then please drop them down below. If you do enjoy this video, then please do give it a like. And if you'd like to see more from me, then please do subscribe to my channel. And before I get into the video, I should just say that this is not a political video seeking to push an agenda towards one party or another. I'm simply using it to point out 5 members of Parliament who have broken the law and have been sent to prison. With all that being said, let's get into the video. First up on the list is Eric Illsley, a Labour MP representing Barnsley Central. In 2009, a parliamentary expenses scandal was exposed concerning expenses claims made by members of the British Parliament in both the Houses of Commons and the House of Lords over the previous years. Several members or former members of both the House of Commons and the House of Lords were prosecuted and sentenced to terms of imprisonment. Eric Illsley became the first MP to be convicted over the expenses scandal after he was handed a 12-month sentence for making false claims. In mid-2009, Mr Illsley was exposed by the Daily Telegraph for making so-called phantom claims for council tax on his expenses. Over a 4-year period, he claimed more than £10,000 from the taxpayer, despite the total bill for the property amounting to only £3,966. He also made regular submissions for £200 expenses claims, which were just below the limit for what would have been required to file receipts. He was imprisoned for 3 months before being released on an electronic tag and going on to appear on BBC Newsnight just months after his release, claiming his expenses claims were an allowance for living in London. At number 2 is Elliot Morley, another Labour MP representing Scunthorpe. Mr Morley was the former Environment Minister in Tony Blair's government, who was sent to prison in May 2011 after he pleaded guilty to expenses fraud as part of the same scandal that saw Eric Illsley sent to prison. The fraud amounted to a total of £32,000, and from 2004 to 2006, the Scunthorpe Labour MP made 19 claims for excessive mortgage payments, whilst also filling out a further 21 second home allowance forms for another mortgage which he had already paid off. He was sentenced to 16 months but was released less than 5 months later. Interestingly, the person announcing the decision at the time was the then Director of Public Prosecutions, Keir Starmer, now leader of the Labour Party, who stated at the time, "We have concluded that there is sufficient evidence to bring criminal charges and that it is in the public interest to charge the individuals concerned." At number 3 is Chris Huhne, a Liberal Democrat representing Eastleigh. Mr Huhne was actually my Member of Parliament as I lived in his constituency at the time of his arrest. Mr Huhne's case was nothing to do with the expenses scandal. He was convicted for perverting the course of justice. Basically, he lied over some speeding tickets. Now, the saga began on the 12th of March 2003 when Huhne was then a member of the European Parliament, so an MEP, and he was clocked speeding on his way home to South London from Stansted Airport. To save him from a driving ban owing to an accumulation of points on his licence, so if you get 12 points on your licence you get an automatic ban, Mr Huhne's wife, Vicky Price, said that she had been driving. The matter lay quiet for 7 years. But in June 2010, Mr Huhne told his family that he was leaving his wife, as a newspaper had learned of his long-term affair with his PR advisor. Miss Price was furious and began talking to newspaper journalists, notably the Sunday Times political editor Isabel Oakeshott, about the arrangement over the driving points. Both of them, so Mr Huhne and Miss Price, ended up being charged with perverting the course of justice. Mr Huhne pleaded guilty, but Miss Price denied the charge, but was found guilty after a trial. Both of them were sentenced to 8 months in prison, going on to serve 2 months before being released on licence, and Mr Huhne was electronically tagged and subject to a curfew. At number 4 is Jonathan Aitken, a Conservative MP representing South Thanet. Mr Aitken is another person like Chris Huhne, who was jailed for perverting the course of justice. He allowed aides of the Saudi royal family to pay his £1,000 hotel bill during a stay at the Paris Ritz in September 1993. But at the time he was a government minister in charge of defence procurement and banned from taking hospitality which might place him under an obligation. When the Guardian newspaper got a copy of his bill and challenged Mr Aitken, he told them that his wife Lalicia had paid his part of it using money he had given her. He then tried to sue the Guardian and Granada Television for libel in the High Court in 1997, using that lie that his wife had paid his part of the bill as part of his evidence in support of his claim. The 16-day libel hearing then collapsed after evidence was produced that Mr Aitken's wife and daughter were in Switzerland during the weekend of September the 17th to the 19th, 1993, when he said they were in Paris. He later admitted a charge of perverting the course of justice by making up that lie, and also by drafting a witness statement for his daughter who backed up his lie. He was jailed at the Old Bailey for 18 months, where he served 7 months before being released. And finally, at number 5 on the list is Fiona Onasanya, a Labour MP representing Peterborough. The member for Peterborough was jailed and also kicked out of the Labour Party after she was found to have lied about a speeding charge in order to avoid a police ticket. The MP and former solicitor was convicted at a retrial of colluding with her brother Festus after her Nissan Micra was caught going at 41 miles per hour in a 30 mile per hour zone near Peterborough in July 2017. She was sentenced to an immediate 3-month jail term, whilst her brother received a 10-month custodial sentence. Mrs Onasanya appealed against her conviction, but this was rejected, with Sir Brian Levinson saying at the Royal Courts of Justice that there was absolutely no basis for the challenge. Having been kicked out of the Labour Party, she refused to resign as an MP, but she was subject to a recall petition which met the 10% threshold needed to remove her, and she announced that she would not stand in the subsequent by-election. She was also struck off as a solicitor after the Solicitors Regulation Authority found that she had failed to act with integrity and had acted dishonestly. She was the first sitting MP to be jailed in 28 years.